Hey guys, Liam here. Do you know what? This has got to be the first time I've done a YouTube video in such a long time. Most of the videos that I've been pushing out on my channel or on Instagram have all been product related stuff. So I thought I would come down to this place, my favourite place, Wood Oaks Farm. And the reason I'm here this evening, because I wanted to bring you along on a journey of photographing the little owls here on Wood Oaks. I've been very lucky to spend a lot of time on this farm over the last 4 years. And in that 4-year period, I've been watching the wildlife here around the farm. We're very lucky that we've got little owls, barn owls and tawny owls. But my prime focus is the little owls here on the farm. So I've made it a mission of mine as a wildlife photographer to capture the little owls on the farm in more unique ways. Now, we've all, as wildlife photographers, like to go out and get those real crisp images of blown out backgrounds where you've got that huge background separation. Now, I wanted to create something different and use unique frames that we've got here on the farm, such as window frames, to capture something a little bit different. So 4 years ago, I actually photographed the little owls here for the first time. So this was lockdown of 2020, where I actually stumbled across the farm through social media. And I decided that I've got to get down here, I've got to try and photograph the little owls. So the first day that I actually came down, I spotted a little owl here in the window behind me. So I was able to get a couple of photographs and I was like, I really like the image, but I wanted to improve on that. So fast forward 2 years from then, I started to install some cameras inside the barn, and that allowed me to kind of capture what was happening, the behavioural patterns of the little owls, what time they were coming in the morning, in the evening, and then that way I set out a camera trap. So I've been doing camera traps on and off for the last 4 or 5 years. And it's a good way to capture subjects in a really unique way, but also capture the subjects when you're not there. So the animals are in their environment and you're not disturbing them. So the first image here on display right now is an image that I captured a couple of years ago. And what I wanted to do was show the definition of the little owl sitting inside the window, which it sat there pretty much every single day as the sun was shining through. So the sun would shine through, the little owl would sit in the window, and essentially like a greenhouse, it would kind of warm its body up. And then after a short period of time, it would leave and go off and do its sort of daily thing. So I set the camera trap up after a few weeks of watching the little owl coming and going. So I knew exactly what time it was going to be there. And it was just a case of photographing that owl, getting the exact exposure for the right time of the day that the light would shine inside that window. And believe it or not, after a couple of weeks, so essentially after nearly 2 years of watching with trail cameras and Reolink cameras, I was able to capture this image. So now fast forward a couple of years, I wanted to do something a little bit different and capture something else on the farm, and that was to look outside of the window itself. So in order to do that, I had to think about how I was going to expose that image. Now, I've had cameras up inside the barn for nearly 3 years now, so I'm able to see the comings and goings pretty much every single day. And around about 5 o'clock most mornings between June and July, the little owl would come into the window, sit. Now, it wasn't sitting behind the window pane, it would actually sit in one of the frames itself. So there's 3 window panes, 2 which are missing and 1 full single pane. And I wanted to capture an image of the little owl actually sitting inside one of those as the sun was rising. Now, this obviously proposed so many challenges. One, how am I going to expose for that image? How am I going to expose for the little owl in the frame? Do I go for a silhouette? Do I illuminate the owl in a way like using some sort of bounce cards or flash? And in the end, I kind of toyed with a few ideas. Now, the first idea was, let's try and capture the sun coming up and it gets to a certain point in the sky and the little owl be in the window and almost like a silhouette. So I was able to capture a couple of images like this, but it really didn't show the definition of the little owl inside the window. It was just too dark. So I got a nice sunrise. It was probably a little bit too high in the sky for my liking, on the sort of shot that I wanted to go for. It wasn't orange enough, you know, that sort of red orange glow that you get first thing in the morning. So I was like, right, let's implement flash. Now, I don't like to use flash too much on subjects, but sometimes it is the only way to sort of back illuminate the subject if you've got the sun coming up in front of it. So I set up 2 flash guns, which what I'll do in a moment, I'm going to take you up inside the barn and show you the setup. And I set up 2 flash guns, one either side, both set on a low power. Now, the reason I set them on low power because I didn't know how the owls were actually going to react. Now, quite surprisingly, the owls don't react to the sound of the shutter, and they actually didn't react to the flash going off as well. I thought it would startle them and they wouldn't come back, but that wasn't the case. So I set both of my flash guns up on low power, and I essentially exposed the image for the sunrise. Now, that is actually quite difficult because I've not been up here in the morning in order to actually expose that image manually. So what I've been doing is I've just essentially been setting the exposure to how I want it, the shutter speed at a certain setting, which I will go through in just a moment, the f-stop at a certain setting and the ISO at a certain setting, obviously combined with the flash guns as well. So a lot of trial and error, back and forth, almost every other evening, checking if we got the shot or not. Eventually, after a few tweaks to the settings, I really kind of nailed how I wanted the composition to look. I went for a wider aspect to start with, and then I kind of cropped in slightly with a much sort of tighter angle, but I still wanted to get that sunrise shot, and it's got to be a real nice warm orange glow as the sun just peaks over the horizon. And I was set for that. That's what I wanted. But the owl also had to sit in the middle frame, so the middle window pane, and it kind of had to have some sort of characteristic about it. Now, for those that have photographed little owls will know the characteristics of a little owl. They're challenging subjects in themselves, but they always seem very grumpy. So I wanted to kind of go for this real dark, moody look. And after another week or so of messing around, the weather here in the UK obviously not really playing ball, finally we had a beautiful sunrise, and at around 5 minutes past 5 in the morning, as the sun literally was just peaking the horizon, the little owl came in the window and the sun started to rise, and I got, well, this shot here, which, you know, I'm super happy with. Now, there's loads of little variables that I could probably mess around with this particular image. Lots of criticism online, lots of obviously good feedback online as well, and about how I could have improved this image. But for me, this whole image was set out to capture the sunrise and the owl in the window, but I didn't want to overdo it with raising the exposure of the owl. So having the flash on low power like this just allowed me to kind of get a real fine balance between the background, which was obviously the sunrise as it came up, and then obviously the foreground, which is the window frame itself, and the little owl sitting inside that window frame. So yeah, this was the final image, and I'll kind of talk through the process that I've gone through to actually get to this stage as well. So from the settings, which we'll do up in the barn just in a moment, and then onto the computer and how I've raised that exposure slightly. So come on up to the barn and I'll show you how I captured this incredible shot of this little owl here on the farm. Right, so I'm now up inside the barn, and as you can see, I've got an absolutely beautiful setting behind me here with these old frames that you can see here. That goes all the way back over there. At some point, I'd actually quite like to try and capture some of the images of the little owls sitting here on these beams. Again, it's quite a challenging one because I'd like to kind of show off all the other beams in the background. So trying to get the light as it comes through this window, which is in front of me here, to illuminate the owl and to kind of light up the background as well. So you can get a really nice sort of warm orange glow image. The little owls actually haven't been sitting here on the beam, so they normally sit here just behind me. They haven't actually sat there that much recently. So what I am going to do at some point is try and work out how I can make a shot here work. Maybe I use flash again, maybe I put some gels in front to kind of create that nice warm glow. But anyway, I won't talk too much about the next shots that I've got in mind. Let me kind of run you through the setup that I've got going on here with the flash guns and the camera trap itself. So this here is the window view itself. So as you can see, there is a roof just in front, which is the brewery just below, and you can just see the horizon there in the background. Now, it's probably not the best evening to show you this because it is absolutely pouring of rain right now, but as you can imagine, as the sun rises in the morning, just on that horizon point, there's a real beautiful warm glow looking out of this window. So my idea here was to capture what it looks like for the owl when it's looking outside, or just sort of sitting here on this window pane itself. And that was what I set out to do, and it also kind of allowed me to capture something a lot more unique. Something that other people wouldn't normally capture, or maybe wouldn't have had an idea to kind of capture this sort of image. So this here is my actual camera trap. Now, I've got a couple of these floating around. This is actually a Peli case, or a cheap version of a Peli case, with a lens hood on the front here which protects the lens inside. Now, I designed this originally to obviously be outdoors. Now we are under this barn roof here, but there is a lot of moisture in the air, so I still like to use a case to keep everything protected, as you can see here. Now, over the past couple of weeks, I have done some modifications to this particular one, so this will probably primarily be my indoor one now, as opposed to one that I'll put outside externally. Now, the reason for that is I have had some issues with the batteries. The Canon 60D, which I've got in here, which runs on a battery grip, I have had some issues with those batteries running out quite quickly. Now, the little owl does come in the window here and sometimes sits here for a couple of hours, and you can imagine with 1,000 triggers, those batteries do deplete quite quickly. So I hooked up a V-lock plate here on the back of this, and then that allows me to add larger batteries for much longer run times. So let's open this back up, and I will show you the camera inside, and then obviously run through the settings with you. So here you can see the Canon 60D, and this is paired with the Canon 17 to 55mm f2.8 lens, and on the top there you'll see the receiver for the flash guns, which is by Camtraptions. So you'll see on the back of the camera here that these are my current settings that I've got for this particular setup. Now, I'm shooting at 1/250th of a second on the shutter, f16 or Sunny 16 as some people like to call it, and an ISO of 320. I'm shooting in burst, and I'm also set here to cloudy on the white balance, and of course always shooting in RAW, so you can retain as much of that data as possible, and then once you put that into post, you can obviously pull that information back and tweak it as much as you like. Now, the whole setup here is all manual, so that's me manually exposing the settings here based on the time of the day that I want to capture the image, along with paired with the flash gun settings as well. It's manually focused, so I basically have to set something in the window, focus on that, take a couple of test shots, and then hope that the owl sits in the right position to where I focused it at. So a fairly easy setup that anyone can kind of create. It's obviously just thinking about compositions and the right settings. These here are my flash housings. They're made from multiple parts of pipe that you can get in most hardware stores. Now, I went with this particular setup and this design because it's completely waterproof. I've got a rubber bung here on the back which allows me access to the flash guns inside. The flash guns I'm using are the Nikon SB28s, and I've got the transmitters here from Camtraptions. I've got this little piece on the top here which gives me full access to the menu settings on the flash guns as well, and obviously this little window here so you can see the you can just see the flash there. The sensor itself, I've been using a homemade sensor, and I've also been using the Camtraptions PIR sensor as well, the V3. I was toying between using them both because I get different results between each one depending on the time of the day, and I have found that with my homemade sensor it seems a lot more sensitive, much more sensitive, so I didn't use that as much because it was essentially triggering when the sun was coming up, and as the sun kept rising it continued to trigger. So I stuck with the Camtraptions sensor, which has just been absolutely brilliant throughout this entire series of images. So yeah, that's kind of my setup, and obviously a quick overview sort of look on how I captured this image from the barn here. It's now on to the next image. I'm not quite sure what that's going to be yet. Maybe I go for a sunset shot, maybe I continue with the theme of this window. I'm not too sure, but let's just quickly jump over to the post-processing side and yeah, just show you how I got this final image again. So that's the end of this video. I hope you found this informative. I've tried to cover as much as I possibly could in terms of obviously talking about the settings that I used, the reasonings why I chose to use the window here on the farm, and obviously the subject, the little owl. It's got to be by far one of my most favourite owls here in the UK to photograph. Certainly the most characteristic of owls here in the UK. Now, I would say the barn owl is probably the most majestic of birds to photograph. Maybe I'll look at that in the future, you know, try and capture something a little bit more unique with the barn owls, whether that's here on the farm or whether I continue with the little owl theme. I'm not sure. I've got a few ideas, you know, up here. So yeah, we'll see what happens next. So yeah, I hope you liked this video. As I say, I hope you found it informative. If you've got any ideas that you think I could maybe use, you know, I'm all for it. I love to listen to what others have got to say. So yeah, that's it for now, and hopefully there'll be another video from me very soon.